greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities.
The El Paso Las Cruces community.
Welcome everybody, thank you for joining me today. I'm starting a series of videos based on The Art of War by Sun Tzu. We are going to be looking first at Chapter 1, Strategic Assessments. So before we get into the Art of War itself, I kind of wanted to go behind a little bit of the backstory behind the Art of War. So the Art of War was written by a person named Sun Tzu. We don't know exactly when he was born, but we know he was born around the time of the Warring States period. We speculate anywhere from 475 BC to 221 BC. He was also speculated to be born within the state of Wu. Sun Tzu was a general, military strategist, writer, and philosopher. The Art of War is heavily influenced by Taoist teachings and beliefs. That was the main spiritual religion at the time. It predates Confucianism, and it's very specific to the region of China. The Art of War is written with a sense of ambiguity, cementing itself as a timeless Chinese classic. The Art of War over time was translated from what would be Mandarin back then till as the language progressed over time, and then translated again into English. So there's a sense of ambiguity in the writing, but because of that, it's kind of stood the test of time and has been looked at by scholars ever since in a way that it could still be applied today. So since this is going to be the first video in the series of videos, I kind of wanted to take some time to introduce you to the commentators. When most people, or some people, read The Art of War, they kind of just read what Sun Tzu has to say and take that as fact, but there's also other people in The Art of War who bring out their commentary. And I think it's kind of important just to introduce you to these characters, just so you could kind of get an idea of what their personalities are, kind of get a feel for where they're coming from. And I think these commentators, I think they're important, even though that a lot of people overlook them, because they kind of add another sense of understanding to what Sun Tzu has to say based on their own personal experiences. This Art of War isn't just a strategic kind of military strategy book, but it's also a philosophical book. And I think that there's a lot of critical thinking involved, and you could really take out of the book what you want from it. And that's also why I didn't mention this in the last segment, but that's kind of why the book is so ambiguous, is because whatever you get out of the book is what you are supposed to get out of the book. You kind of take your own personal experiences into account, and whatever you interpret that Sun Tzu is trying to say is probably what he was trying to say, and you do with that information what you want. So I'm just going to kind of go over the commentators. The first one is Cao Cao, but I think his name is pronounced Cao Cao. If someone could correct me on that. He was born 155 to 200 AD. He was a distinguished Chinese general and military strategist. Cao Cao was he was kind of like Sun Tzu's equal, I guess you could say, as far as military strategist, as far as a general. So when Cao Cao talks or commentates on Sun Tzu's writing, there's a lot of affirmations going on, and it kind of shows it. If we're looking at the book through like a strictly military lens, I think Cao Cao is a good commentator to kind of read of, because he either shares more military insight on what he's trying to say, or he affirms like, oh yes, this is in fact true. And the reason why I have Cao Cao as Fire Lord Ozai from Avatar: The Last Airbender is because I guess Cao Cao was kind of a jerk, so I thought it would be appropriate to make him Fire Lord Ozai. Next we have Meng Shi. Meng Shi lived in the Liang dynasty from 502 to 555 AD. We don't know his importance, all we know is that he lived during a time of suffering. I thought it would be appropriate to make Meng Shi Prince Zuko, because Prince Zuko suffered a lot in Avatar: The Last Airbender, but all of his suffering was self-inflicted. Next, we have Jia Lin, who was during the Tang Dynasty, sometime from 618 to 906 AD. I did not put the AD in there. We don't know his importance, but he lived in China during more prosperous times. And I thought that the cabbage vendor from Avatar: The Last Airbender would be a good character for Jia Lin, because even though he suffered, if you watch The Legend of Korra, there was Cabbage Corp. So he went through a time of suffering, but he made probably the second largest company within, was it Republic City? So yeah. Next we have Li Quan. He was born in the Tang Dynasty from 618 to 906 AD. Li Quan was a devotee of Taoism and a martial artist. Both of these statements are understatement. Devotee of Taoism, his life was centered around it. He was a main spiritual figure. He lived in some mountain ranges that Taoists revered. They said that these mountain ranges are sacred. Li Quan lived in those mountain ranges. And as far as martial arts go, he was a Shaolin boxer. So I thought it would be appropriate to make him Po. Next we have Du Yu. He was born from 735 to 812 AD. Du Yu was an official military advisor, war counselor, military inspector, and politician. I'll explain why I made him adult Aang in a second. Du Mu was born or lived from 803 to 852 AD. He is the grandson of Du Yu. Du Mu was a high-achieving academic and served in the imperial court. He was also a great poet. Du Mu died at the age of 50. He was also known for being honest. He also, apparently, when he died, he wanted his poetry to be buried with him. And I know that the character for Du Mu is Milo. And I know Milo to you might not seem like a very high-achieving academic person. But the reason why I chose adult Aang and Milo is because I needed a grandson-grandfather dynamic. And Avatar Aang is Milo's grandfather, so I needed to have that dynamic going on, and this is where I found that. So that's why I made Milo Du Mu in Avatar Aang Du Yu. Next we have Zhang Yu. Zhang Yu was born during the Sung Dynasty from 906 to 1278 AD, sometime around there. We don't know who he is, but he is speaking from experience from watching Mongolian invasions. You could see why I made the city walk guy Zhang Yu. Stupid Mongolians. Next we have Russell as Mei Yaochen. Mei Yaochen lived from 1002 to 1060 AD. Mei Yaochen served in local and central governments. Mei Yaochen was also a distinguished writer and was a compiler/editor of documents. So does that make him a noter? I don't know. Next we have Wang Shi as Master Shifu. Wang Shi was during the Sung Dynasty, specifically the early 11th century. Wang Shi was a scholar in the Imperial Academy. He was also an author of 2 books, the Spring and Autumn Annuals. This is kind of a big deal because he was, to put this in a Western context, would be like if he was like an author in one of the books of the Bible. So he was author in some of the books in the Spring and Autumn Annuals was like, it's a Confucius text. So it'd be like if Wang Shi was kind of like Apostle Paul or something. Next we have Chen Hao as Li Sheng. Chen Hao was in the Sung Dynasty, specifically the early 12th century. He became an officer of the state when he was 12 years old. He raised an army to defend his homeland. He was also known for being rigorously independent. He was a very strong leader. Next we have Ho Yangshi as Chifu. We don't know anything about him, and that's why I made Ho Yangshi Chifu, because Chifu is nobody. So this is kind of how the structure of the video is going to work. I already broke apart the chapter line by line. We are going to read each line one by one. We are going to read commentary from 2 commentators per each line to try to see if we could gain a greater perspective on this one of Sun Tzu's lines. And then we are going to repeat step 1 and step 2. And at the end, when we read all the lines one by one, we read all the commentators, we are going to read the whole thing as a whole. And that's step 3. We are going to read the whole chapter as a whole and see if anything pops out to us that we would have not known before. So before we start, I just kind of want to offer a challenge to you. So each day, pick a line from the chapter, pick a line from Sun Tzu, and just ponder on it for a day. Think about it, try to pick apart the line word by word, see what Sun Tzu might be trying to say, and try to remember the lines if you can. Also, I will allow you and even encourage you to use this video as a reference if you don't have a physical copy of the book. Finally we made it. Here we start at line 1. Just in case you're curious, there's 21 lines in total for chapter 1. Sun Tzu says, "Military action is important to the nation. It is the ground of death and life, the path of survival and destruction. So it is imperative to examine it." When I first read this, I wasn't quite sure what imperative meant, but I looked it up and it means crucial, so it's crucial to examine it. Dreemurr says, "The survival or destruction of a country and the life or death of its people may depend on military action, so it is necessary to examine it carefully." Jia Lin says, "The ground means the location, the place of pitched battle. Gain the advantage and you live. Lose the advantage and you die. Therefore, military action is called the ground of death and life. The path means the way to adjust to the situation and establish victory. Find this and you survive. Lose this and you perish. Therefore, it is said to be imperative to examine it. An ancient document says, there is a way of survival which helps and strengthens you. There is a way of survival which helps and strengthens you. There is a way of destruction which pushes you into oblivion." Next we move on to line 2. Sun Tzu says, "Therefore measure in terms of 5 things. Use these assessments to make comparisons and thus find out what the conditions are. The 5 things are the way, the weather, the terrain, the leadership, and the discipline." So first, before I move on, I just kind of wanted to explain the way. The way is a very Taoist philosophy. In a Western context, don't hate me for saying this, but the easiest way to explain the way to Western people, I think, is to explain it through like the Force of Star Wars. So that, like, it's some spiritual manifestation that inhabits everything and controls everything, and I think it's just easier to explain it by, it's the Force. So Dreemurr says 5 things are to be assessed: the way, the weather, the lay of the land, the leadership, and the discipline. These are to be assessed at the headquarters. First, assess yourself and your opponent in terms of these 5 things, deciding who is superior. Then you can determine who will likely to prevail. Having determined this, only then could you mobilize your forces. I think that's interesting because that kind of makes you have to look at yourself. It's like, you kind of have to look at yourself as a leader. I think that's kind of hard for a lot of people. And then goes for Wang Shi. Harmony among people is the basis of the way of military operations. The right weather and an advantageous position helps. When these 3 elements are present, then is the time to discuss mobilizing the army. Mobilizing the army requires ability on the part of the leadership. When the leadership is able, then there will be good discipline. Next we move on to line 3. Sun Tzu says, "The way means inducing the people to have the same aim as the leadership, so that they will share death and share life without fear of danger." I thought this line was kind of powerful because it kind of shows like there has to be a connection between the leadership and then the subordinates. Like they have to be on the same path. Dreemurr says, "The way means humanness and justice. In ancient times, a famous minister of state asked a political philosopher about military matters. The philosopher said, 'Humanness and justice are the means by which to govern properly. When government is carried out properly, people feel close to the leadership and think little of dying for it.'" Yeah. And sorry, I did not proofread anything that I wrote. I don't believe in proofreading. So if you find any typos, just think of them as Easter eggs. English teachers hate me. Okay. Next goes for GLN. "If the leaders can be humane and just, share both the gains and the troubles of the people, then the troops will be loyal and naturally identify with the interests of the leadership." Line 4. Sun Tzu says, "The weather means the seasons." Thank you, Captain Obvious. Zhang Yu says, quoting the founder of the Tang Dynasty, "In ancient times, many soldiers lost their fingers to frostbite on campaigns against the Huns, and many soldiers died of plague on campaigns against the southern tribes. This was because of carrying out operations in winter and summer." So does that mean it's better to carry out operations in fall and spring? We'll see. Wang Shi says, quoting Fan Li, "This is the meaning of 3 sayings. Don't go into another's territory at an unfavorable time." This one actually kind of reminds me of, there's always talk about China wanting to invade Taiwan, but I didn't know if you knew this, but there's like only a period of like 2 weeks throughout the whole year where China could actually invade Taiwan logistically. And it kind of puts emphasis on, you kind of have to wait for the right time of the year to plan an attack. Next we move on to line 5. Sun Tzu says, "The terrain is to be assessed in terms of distance, difficulty or ease of travel, dimension and safety." I'm not quite sure what he means by dimension, to be honest. Zhang Yu says, "In any military operation, it is important first to know the lay of the land. When you know the distance to be traveled, then you can plan whether to proceed directly or by a circuitous route. When you know the difficulty or ease of travel, then you can determine the advantages of infantry or mounted troops. When you know the dimensions of the area, then you can assess how many troops you need, many or few. When you know the relative safety of the terrain, then you can discern whether to do battle or disperse." Okay, so dimension is like, I guess, the topography of the area around you. Next we move on to line 6. Sun Tzu says, "Leadership is a matter of intelligence, trustworthiness, humanness, courage, and sternness." Cao Cao says, "A general should have these 5 virtues. Thank you for your affirmation." GLN says, "Reliance on intelligence alone results in rebelliousness. Exercise of humanness alone results in weakness. Fixation on trust results in folly. Dependence on the strength of courage results in violence. Excessive sternness of command results in cruelty. When one has all 5 virtues together, each appropriate to its function, then one can be a military leader." And I thought Jaylin's input right here was pretty important because you don't want to be all these what am I trying to say? You don't want to be the extreme of all these things, but you want these things to work in tandem with each other. They kind of have to work in balance. So you might have to, balance sternness and humanness and all these other elements to kind of work together. Now we move on to line 7. Sun Tzu says, "Discipline means organization, chain of command, and logistics." This must be, what's his name? The guy Jeff Bezos' favorite line. Mei Yao Chen says, "Organization means that the troops must be grouped in a regulated manner. Chain of command means that there must be officers to keep the troops together and lead them. Logistics means overseeing supplies." Now we move on to line 8. Sun Tzu says, "Every general has heard of these 5 things. Those who know them prevail. Those who do not know them do not prevail." Zhang Yu says, "Everyone has heard of these 5 things, but only those who deeply understand the principles of adaptation and impasse will win." Now we move on to line 9. Sun Tzu says, "Therefore use these assessments for comparisons, to find out what the conditions are. That is to say, which political leadership has the way, which general has the ability, who has the better climate and terrain, whose discipline is effective, whose troops are the stronger, whose officers and soldiers are the better trained, whose system of rewards and punishments are clear. This is how you know who will win." Dreemurr says, "When it comes to establishing regulations, everyone high and low should be treated alike. I think we should elect Dreemurr for Congress. Milo for Congress." Du Yu says, "Compare whose orders are the most effective, whose subordinates do not dare to disobey." Now we're at line 9. Sun Tzu says, "Assess the advantages in taking advice. Then structure your forces accordingly, to supplement extraordinary tactics. Forces are to be structured strategically based on what is advantageous." Cao Cao says, "Structure depends on strategy. Strategy is determined according to events." Just in case you didn't know. Now we move on to line 9. Sun Tzu says, "A military operation involves deception. Even though you are competent, appear to be incompetent. Though effective, appear to be ineffective." So this is one of those things that Sun Tzu is kind of known for, is, military operations involves deception. He's really big on deception. Li Kuan says, and this is a quote from the book, Li Kuan told a story on how one of the generals of the Han Dynasty rebelled and joined forces with the Hun. The emperor sent 10 scouts to observe them, and all reported that they could be effectively attacked. The emperor sent one Lao Jing, who reported that, on the contrary, the Huns could not be effectively attacked. When the emperor asked him why, he replied, "They are competent, yet appearing to be incompetent, so I consider it unfeasible to attack." The emperor was wroth. He punished Lu Jing for getting in his way, and personally sent out with a large contingent. They were hemmed in by the Huns, however, and cut off from supplies for 7 days. This, concluded Li, is the meaning of an army appearing to be weak. So yeah, the emperor did not listen, and he should have. Wang Shi. "When strong appear weak, brave appear fearful, orderly appear chaotic, full appear empty, wise appear foolish, many appear as few, advancing appear to retreat, moving quickly appear to be slow, taking appear to leave, in one place appear to be in another." So does this mean if I want to be attractive, I have to appear to be ugly? Following this logic, I think so. Now we move on to line 12. Sun Tzu says, "When you are going to attack nearby, make it look as if you're going to go a long way. When you are going to attack far away, Make it look like as if you're going a short distance. Li Quan says, this is to cause the opponent to be unprepared. I understand that it's meant to cause the opponent to be unprepared, as in they're not prepared for what the real attack is going to be. But I mean, like, how do you actually make it look like you're going a far distance when you're actually getting like, how does that work? Like, as far as operations goes, I'm kind of curious. Now we look at line 13. Sun Tzu says, draw them in with the prospect of gain, take them by confusion. Zhang Yu says, show them a little prospect of gain to lure them, then attack and overcome them. Zhang Yu also says, use deception to throw them into confusion, lead them on in order to take them. When the states of Wu and Yue were at war with each other, Wu sent out 3,000 criminals to give an appearance of disorder, so as to lure Yue. Some of the criminals ran, some of them gave up. The Yue army fought with them, only to be defeated by the army of Wu. I thought that was a pretty crazy story. Don't tell the United States Army, or else they'll get some ideas. Nobody tell the United States Army, or else all of a sudden all the prisons can be at half capacity. Now we move on to line 14. Sun Tzu says, when they are fulfilled, be prepared against them. When they are strong, avoid them. But when do I fight? Dreemurr says, if the enemy's government is fulfilled, meaning that there is mutual love between the rulers and the ruled, there is clarity and trustworthiness in the systems of rewards and punishments, and soldiers are well trained, then you should be on guard against them. Do not wait for a clash to make your preparations. When the enemy's military is strong, you should avoid them for the time being. Wait until they slack off, watching for an opening to attack. Jia Lin says, for the weak to control the strong, it is logistically necessary to await a change. Okay, line 15. Sun Tzu says, use anger to throw them into disarray. Mei Yao Chen says that, if they are quick-tempered, then stir them up to excite them, so that they go into battle carelessly. Zhang Yu says, if they are violent and easily angered, then use embarrassment to enrage them so that their morale is upset. Then they will proceed carelessly without formulating a plan. I kind of feel like this is what the Chinese Communist Party is trying to do to America today, except it's not really working that well. Already, on the line 16. Sun Tzu says, use humility to make them haughty. Li Quan says, if they ply you with expensive gifts and sweet talk, they are up to something. Du Yu says, when they are stirred up and about to make their move, then you should pretend to be cowed, so as to raise their spirits. Wait for them to slack off, then regroup and attack. Very deceptive. Line 17. Sun Tzu says, tire them by flight. Wang Shi says, this means making a lot of surprise attacks. When they come out, you go home. When they go home, you go out. When they go to aid their left flank, you go to the right. When they go aid to the right flank, you go to the left. This is the way you can tire them out. I like that. When they come out, you go home. When they go home, you go out. That's funny. Zhang Yu says, this way, your strength will remain intact while they will be worn out. Very smart. Okay, now we're at the line 18. Sun Tzu says, cause division among them. Chen Hao has to say about that. If they are stingy, you be generous. If they are harsh, you be lenient. That way their leadership and followers will be suspicious of each other, and you can cause division among them. Zhang Yu says, you may cause rifts between the leadership and their followers, or between them and their allies. Cause division and take aim at them. Okay, we're on the line 19. Sun Tzu says, attack them when they are unprepared. Make your move when they do not expect it. What Mengshi has to say about that is, strike at their gaps, attack when they are lax, don't let the enemy figure out how to prepare. This is why it is said that in military operations, formlessness is the most effective. One of the great warrior leaders said, the most effective of movements is the one that can be unexpected. The best of plans is the one that is unknown. I think that's pretty smart. Now we move on to line 20. Sun Tzu says, the formation and procedure used by the military should not be divulged beforehand. What Cao Cao has to say about that is, to divulge means to leak out. The military has no constant form. Just as water has no constant shape, adapt as you face the enemy without letting them know beforehand what you are going to do. Therefore, assessment of the enemy is in the mind. Observation of the situation is in the eyes. Okay, I was just about to ask what divulgement. Thank you, Cao Cao, for explaining that to me. Li Quan says, attack when they are unprepared and not expecting it, and you will surely win. This is the essence of martial arts. To be kept secret and not divulge. Okay, line 21. Thanks for hanging in there, guys, till the end. Sun Tzu says, the one who figures on victory at headquarters before even doing battle is the one who has the most strategic factors on his side. The one who figures on inability to prevail at headquarters before doing battle is the one who has the least strategic factors on his side. The one with many strategic factors in his favor wins. The one with many strategic factors of his loses. How much the more so for one with no strategic factors in his favor. Observing the matter in this way, I can see who will win and who will lose. Zhang Yu says, when your strategy is deep and far-reaching, then you gain by your calculations, as much so you can win before you even fight. When your strategic thinking is shallow and nearsighted, then you gain by your calculations is little, so you lose before you do battle. Much strategy prevails over little strategy, so those with no strategy cannot but be defeated. Therefore it is said that victorious warriors win first when they let go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. That's pretty strong right there. So you have to win at home before you even hit the battlefield. It's pretty strong. Okay, now we are going to read the whole thing together. As we are reading this, try to see if you can see anything as you reread the lines. Try to see if anything that you didn't realize before stands out to you now, or if you discover some deeper meaning, whatever Sun Tzu says as we read this. Just try to keep that in mind. Okay. Military action is important to the nation. It is on the ground of death and life, the path of survival and destruction, so it is imperative to examine it. Therefore, measure in terms of 5 things. Use these assessments to make comparisons and thus find out what the conditions are. The 5 things are the way, the weather, the terrain, the leadership, and the discipline. The way means inducing the people to have the same aim as the leadership, so that they will share death and share life without fear of danger. The weather means the seasons. The terrain is to be assessed in terms of distance, difficulty, or ease of travel, dimension, and safety. Leadership is a matter of intelligence, trustworthiness, humanness, courage, and sternness. Discipline means organization, chain of command, and logistics. Every general has heard of these 5 things. Those who do not know them prevail. Those who know them prevail. Those who do not know them do not prevail. Therefore, use these assessments for comparison and find out what the conditions are. Think, that is to say, which political leadership has the way, Which general has the ability? Who has the better climate and terrain? Whose discipline is effective? Whose troops are stronger? Whose officers and soldiers are better trained? Whose system of rewards and punishments is clear? This is how you know who will win. Assess the advantages in taking advice, and structure your forces according to the supplement extraordinary tactics. Forces are to be structured strategically based on what is advantageous. A military operation involves deception, even though you are competent, appear to be incompetent. Though effective, appear to be ineffective. When you are going to attack nearby, make it look as if you're going a long way. When you are going to go attack far away, make it look as if you are nearby. Make it look as if you're going a long way when you want to attack, and make it as you're going a short distance. Draw them in with the prospect of gain. Take them by confusion. When they are fulfilled, be prepared against them. When they are strong, avoid them. Use anger to throw them in the disarray. Use humility to make them haughty. Tire them by flight. Cause division among them. Attack when they are unprepared. Make your move when they do not expect it. The formation and procedure used by the military should not be divulged beforehand. The one who figures on victory at the headquarters before even going to battle is one who has the most strategic factors on his side. The one who figures on inability to prevail at headquarters before doing battle is the one who has least strategic factors on his side. The one with many strategic factors in his favor wins. The one with few strategic factors on his side loses. How much the more so for one with no strategic factors in his favor. Observing the matter in this way, I can see who will win and who will lose. Alright, so that does it for the strategic assessments section of Sun Tzu Art of War. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, most importantly. Remember, there is 13 segments in total, and we just finished with number 1. Please remember to subscribe if you want to see all 13 of them. Alright, you guys, take care, stay healthy and happy, have a good rest of your evening, or morning. Alright, ciao.